It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Mr. Mark Richardson. Mark is highly regarded as a pioneer in developing standards of professionalism in the construction industry. He spent more than 30 years with Case Design Remodeling as president and co-chairman, is a recipient of NARI's Harold Hammerman Spirit of Education Award, inducted into NAHB's Hall of Fame, and has been featured in such publications as Fortune and the Washington Post. But many of you probably know him from your free copy of his book, The Art of Time Mastery, The 7 Steps for Mastering Your Time. Welcome, Mark. The stage is all yours.
You know, I think that we fall into different categories when it comes to time mastery. Some of you are out there that, quite frankly, are juggling so many balls, you're a little bit of a hot mess and you want to rethink your time. Some of you certainly are more in an enhancement. You kind of have a feel and handle of your time, but you know what, you want to reduce some stress and focus on your weak links and certainly add techniques. And then there's another group of you out there that, quite frankly, you have your kind of act together in terms of time mastery, but you're looking to kind of take it to the next level, to gain additional hours, to maybe accomplish some goals that you otherwise are more challenged with. So, you know, whatever category you're in, I think the things that we're going to be talking about today, I think will help you. And what I will say is the most successful in remodeling, the most successful in remodeling sales and, you know, in general, in terms of production, what have you, are in fact the folks that I do believe have a command when it comes to their time. And that's one of the common denominators, I think, that really exists. So I think the first question that you have to ask yourself is, you know, why is this important? Why is being in control of your time important? And you can certainly make a list, but you know, those that I think can commit to this, you're going to reduce some of the overwhelm, the stress. Matter of fact, you know, there are a lot of things in life that are stressful, but you know, if the big part of the driver is the overwhelm, you're also going to accomplish more, and you're going to improve kind of your, you know, your ability to, you know, be better at certain things. You'll also be able to keep promises. Think about the amount of time that you kind of fell short on expectations or promises. Also, those days that you really kind of have your act together and you've mastered your time, you're going to think more clearly, and you're also going to achieve those medium and long-term kind of goals. So the bottom line, though, is those that have better control of their day are more fulfilled. They just feel better about themselves. So one of the things that I'm a big believer in is trying to quantify time a little bit in terms of, you know, kind of making it more meaningful. And the irony is, as you can see with this chart here, you know, it doesn't take that much more in terms of squeezing more out of the day that ultimately creates huge amounts of hours in the year. When I'm coaching and working with either businesses or individual leaders, you know, it's all about how do I get that extra, you know, 10, 20, 30, 60 minutes a day. And if you can adopt, I think, a real commitment to this, you can, in fact, get like a dividend of an extra 30 minutes a day. And think about that. It's 183 hours in a year. And you think about, you know, what would you do with that extra 100 hours in a year? What would you do with an extra 200? And if you really, really get masterful at this, you have an extra 300 or 400 hours in a year. And it's just amazing what you can accomplish or what you give back as a dividend. Whatever you use it for, I think it's pretty important. But the important thing is to try to make time a little bit more concrete and meaningful. So one of the overall themes that is critical, it's kind of one of the foundational elements to get better at time mastery, is understanding kind of proactive versus reactive time. And so proactive time is the time that you can control versus reactive that others control. Now, one exercise I encourage everybody to do whether it's now or whether it's, as you reflect on this, is write down those two numbers, proactive versus reactive. And a little bit of a hint for those challenged in math, it's got to add up to 100%. So with that being said, the best of the best, I think, can start to have the right balance of proactive time. Now, the level of proactive time that you really want to ideally get to is about 80–85%. There's always going to be reactive time and reactive issues. So some primary sources with reactive activities are really the following. And I come up with these three sources because if you can isolate on squeezing these three sources and focus on these three sources, what you're going to find is if you're 50-50 right now, you'll move it to 60% proactive, 70%, 75%. But you've got to start somewhere in terms of what creates the reactive activity in your life. So the first one is your clients. What I encourage, especially those involved in remodeling, think about the number of active clients that you have. These are clients either under construction, in design, about to sign a contract, whatever. Most remodelers, in terms of having a number that they're actively personally involved in, it might be 5 to 10, 5 to 15 clients that fall into those. So Monday morning, what I want you to do is proactively communicate to all of those. Now, in some cases, it might be just a check-in, how was your weekend? But more importantly, if you feel there might be some connection that week, some interaction that week, set a time to be able to do it. Send a note to Mary and say, Mary, hope you had a great weekend. I know there's a couple loose ends on your project. I'm going to be out there Wednesday at 12 o'clock. Hopefully that'll work for you, and let's make a list of those things and cover them then. What you're doing is you're shifting it from reactive, they're going to communicate with you, to proactive, and that's you control it. So as a result of that, that will help to shift the blend. The second element is your team. So rather than constantly being interrupted with your team members, respond back to them, say, love to be able to handle this. 1 o'clock today would be better. How's that work for you? Now, a third of the time, they're going to say fine, and they're going to acquiesce to what you want to do. A third of the time, they're going to say, no, this is an emergency, and you're going to have to deal with it. But another third of the time, guess what? They're going to handle it themselves and not necessarily have it be a reactive activity for you. And then the third source is really your family. Now, the same rules apply with your clients and family if you want to adjust. But the bottom line on this, it's going to be very hard to get control of your time unless you can get more proactive time and less reactive time. So one of the important themes is trying to be effective, not just efficient. See, we have a tendency with all the texting and all the emailing and everything going on out there, we're always looking for more efficient ways. And certainly efficiency is important, but at the end of the day, it's about accomplishing the desired goal and outcome in the best way. And I think some of the techniques that you're going to learn a little bit later are all about being effective, not just being efficient. So one of the exercises I encourage you to do, if you want to become more time masterful, is actually take some inventory of your time. And by taking some inventory of your time, you're looking at when you want to do certain things, you're looking at where you're going to do them, and you're also looking at what those things are. So let me just kind of unpack this. So in my day, and this is a good example, you can make a simple little chart for yourself. You don't need any special program for this, but what you want to start with is the when, the time of the day. Now, when I talk to audiences all the time, I ask a question: are you a morning person or an evening person? And what's interesting is almost inevitably it's about a 50-50 split. Isn't that interesting? Some are morning, some are evening. But what I think the more important thing is are you doing the activities that you can control in the right time of the day for you? For example, early in the morning in terms of mindset, for me, it's very reflective time. Whereas as the time gets later and later, it's more creative, more productive. And then midday, starting around lunchtime for me, that's when I really like to be more interactive with clients and people and coaching and all of those kind of things, because that's really the mode, the mindset that I'm in. So you can organize your activities more around your kind of disposition, your frame of mind, your mindset. Also, where you do the activities makes a big difference. Sometimes you need almost a little mini sanctuary to do them so you can focus, very quiet place, and others you can be more bouncing around. We're allowed to bounce around again, and you can do the activities there. You can do them, while you're doing other activities and multitasking. But the bottom line is you need to get to know yourself. And by knowing yourself, it allows you to focus on when is the best time, what is the activity and the mindset that you're actually in that ideal place, and actually where you should be doing that activity. This exercise in itself will absolutely save you a good solid 30 minutes to an hour a day if you can just get that balance in that sync. So another inventory element that you can take for yourself is looking at kind of the blend of activities in the day. So what you want to do is you want to take inventory of your time. And by doing so, this is an example of a salesperson who is working on average a 45-hour week. And when I started to work with him, on the far left was a typical amount of time that he was spending on the different activities, from the sales activities to the marketing activities, so on and so on and so on. And you can see the average amount of time he was spending, which you then convert that into a percentage or blend of your day. Then the follow-up question I asked this particular individual I was working with a couple of years ago, I said, okay, in a perfect or ideal world, what would you like to do to change this blend? Well, he said, I'd like to get one more sales appointment a week. And to do that, he'd like to get a little bit more marketing or a little bit calling past clients and interactive things. He'd like to, work on a little bit more training so he can improve his close rate a bit. His project level of work and working on moving things forward wasn't fundamentally going to change much. And, the internal meetings and so on was pretty much the same. So he did try to squeak out a little bit more efficiency in terms of site visits and administrative. So now, this is the same 45-hour week. And what this individual was able to accomplish, he increased his income, he increased his sales by about 25%, simply by adjusting the blend and being focused on the right amount of time for the right activities in the right time of the day. So another exercise that I think we all can do, there's a lot of stress out there, and certainly the pandemic has caused a lot of it for many of us. But one of the exercises I oftentimes do with folks that I'm working with is think about this metaphor that on a sunny day, you're feeling good, and on a cloudy day, you're kind of depressed, you're sad. So this exercise of the stress clouds is a pretty simple one, and it's kind of fun one to do. So just take a piece of paper and think about all the things that are weighing on you, that are causing you stress. Draw a little symbol of yourself and start to draw how big these clouds are that are breaking up the light coming in and making you feel good. Then isolate what these are. In this case, the examples were a Jones meeting, a trip preparing for, and a certain talk that I was given to a particular group. The next thing you do is you want to write down a few actions and bullets for these things that kind of will vaporize the cloud. We'll have that cloud sort of drift away. And then what you want to do is you want to weave those into your calendar. You want to start to make appointments to yourself to start to address those. Now, if you can do this simple little exercise, and I do this for myself about every 10 days, you're going to find that those clouds get smaller. You're able to control things so much better. So next we want to get into more of a time mastery system. Now I call this a system because when you really think about it, most people who are trying to get better at anything need to have a process. They need to have a system to be able to get better and better at it. You know, I love this quote from Norman Vincent Peale from many, many years ago. Plan your work for today and every day, then work your plan. Now think about this. It all starts with a plan. Now, many of you have a to-do list. If I ask many audiences all the time, you know, are you planning your day? What do you actually do? They will say, absolutely, I plan my day. Well, they make a to-do list. That's no different than saying build deck or renovate kitchen. It's just it's a to-do list. It's not a plan. Your work. Now, you want to really be uber focused on your work for today. It doesn't say for next week, it says today, and do it every day so you become masterful at a system. Then and only then you work your plan. So no different. You don't want to have a half-baked plan and then launch it, or you don't want to have a blueprint or design that you go ahead and start construction. You really want to bake it. So that's really, I think, the notion of this quote. So here's the system and how it really works. And I'm going to walk you through kind of the elements of the system. You know, it all starts, I think, with the right kind of expectation. Then you're going to do a brain dump, timeout. And as you can see, the brain dump is the to-do list. That's where most people start and they launch their day. But as I'm going to walk you through this system, you're going to see that there's a lot of elements that are beyond necessarily just that to-do list. So here's the framework for the first 30 days. Number one is you need a minimum of 30-day commitment because that forms a habit. Now, there's been a lot said about this. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, people saying, gosh, it takes 66 days to form a habit. And therefore, you know, this pandemic is creating new habits for us in many ways, in large part because it's gone on so long. Well, when it comes to time mastery in a system, you need to do that. The first week's going to be tough. And the techniques that I'm going to give you today and that are in the book that my friends from Leap and Ingage are actually going to be able to get to you, you know, you got to follow those techniques 100%, at least for the first month. You've got to invest a minimum of 30 minutes a day to be able to do it. And this is something a little bit different than some of you have experienced. You know, include the professional and the personal activities. Try to be disciplined, but not obsessed by these. This is about you getting better. This is about you gaining an extra 30 minutes an hour a day, and then look at that dividend and what it's going to mean to you. So the first thing you want to do is you want to do this exercise in a quiet place. It's very hard to do this planning exercise when you're sitting at the breakfast table. You want to start at least 30 minutes before the first activity and use a hand type of spiral notebook. Now, some of you are going to resist that at the beginning. And I would just encourage, at least for the first month or so, do it in a very simple manual way. And then in the future, if you want to use other technologies, you can certainly do it. Have all your data in front of you and turn your cell phone off. This is a time that you need to really be in the zone and reflect. Now you're ready to plan. Okay, so looking up at the screen here, imagine this being just a sheet of 8.5 by 11 in your spiral notebook. The first thing that you want to do is you want to put the date and put a theme for the day. I'm a theme for the day. You know, my theme today was squeeze it in because I had a lot of things going on and I got to take advantages of the little bits of time in between things. You know, it might be in this particular day, it was balance, you know, try to keep things in balance that day. So the first thing you want to do is a brain dump. And the brain dump is your to-do list. It's just literally dumping every single thing that's in your head all the way down until there's nothing else that's there. You're looking at your day timer, you're looking at your calendar, you've got all those things. The next thing you want to do is just highlight reactive time. Now, this is a very important element. Everybody has reactive time. I encourage everybody to start with 120 minutes a day of reactive time. And you'll find that that will go down as you get more control of your day. The next thing you want to do is time out. Get up, go walk outside, breath of fresh air, get a cup of coffee, whatever it happens to be, and say to yourself, is there anything else I'd like to accomplish today? Anything sort of in my medium and long-term goals? And if you do that, you'll always come up with a couple more things. So in this case, I was kind of thinking about a new training concept and also contacting my godfather for setting up a lunch. The next thing you want to do is attach time to these. Now, here's where the system comes in. Each one of these things are going to take amount of time. So what you want to do is you want to attach time to all of these activities. The amount of minutes all the way down. Now and again, I know this is overly simplistic, but it's really, really important. Now you just add it up. And that creates a certain amount of a window for your productive day. In this case, it was 11 hours and 25 minutes. The next thing you want to do is make it visual. You want to set up a timeline. So on the right side of your paper, of the 8.5 by 11, you literally make a timeline going down. And you got a beginning and you got an end. And you want to start to put in the blocks of time that represents the appointments or different elements throughout the day. The next thing you want to do is to actually block out the times. This is where that are the sacred times where you have meetings or some sort of event, like today's webinar today. This 1-hour webinar would be a block of time. The next thing you want to do is you want to hook the timeline and your brain dump together. So you simply want to be able to have all of the letters, which are corresponding to the holes of the time, hooked together. The next thing you want to do, which is pretty simple, is an analyze, does this work? Well, we know the total amount of the window of the day works, but we have to add up the individual A's, the individual B's and C's and so on, and then compare that to the window of the time that's available. Now you have a plan. This is not a brain dump. This is not a to-do list. It is a plan. Now, obviously, I created one here as a sample that really works. And you're going to find, as I'll talk about some of the mistakes that people make, there's many days you've got to go back and kind of like a hunk of clay, work it, work it, work it. The key is you've got to have a strong plan before you launch it. If you don't, you will fail. If you fail, you will feel not fulfilled and good about your day. So now I launch it. And by launching it, I'm simply monitoring and circling on the left column there the different activities that are happening, and I move through. I don't need to think about anything but the next activity. I don't need to worry about what's going to happen in the afternoon. I need to focus in the morning. So this is a simple time mastery system. Again, this is in the book that will help you be able to understand it more, but I think it'll help. So the following are some common mistakes. And some of these common mistakes I see out there that you can really kind of avoid. Whether you're using my system or not, you can avoid. One is if you've got a total amount of a day that's going to take 14 hours of activity and you think you're going to fit it in to 10 hours, you're mistaken. You're setting yourself up to fail. Why do that? All it's going to have you do is stressed out and not fulfilled. The second in this system is making the activities too general. You have to be specific. Rather than saying work on the Jones proposal, you might work on an outline, a design, an estimate. Every one of those are elements that take a certain amount of time. So try to be a little bit more specific when you're figuring out your day. Another one is not spending enough time on this. The best of the best, the most successful, they'll spend 40, 50 minutes a day. I'm just asking you to spend 30, but if you spend less than 30 minutes a day, you will not have a good plan. It's no different than designing a remodeling project. It's not going to necessarily be well-baked and well thought out. Not being in a quiet place, that's really important as well. You cannot create a plan if you're constantly getting distractions. Now, I worked with someone years ago that used to do the exercise in his office, but he got constant interaction and interruptions in his office. So he went to the other side of the showroom, and he was actually more effective doing it. Getting creative with the process. You know, in the first 30 days, and this sounds extremely dogmatic, but you're going to have to follow my process for the first 30 days. After that, you can do it your way, but follow this process. Not monitoring. You know, this is important that you monitor every 60 to 90. How am I doing? What are tweaks? What adjustments? It's sort of like flying an airplane and watching the air traffic control and watching the weather and adjusting based on your ground speed and what have you. You've got to monitor the progress if you're going to be successful. And certainly giving up too soon on the system. Like I said already, if you can't commit to 30 days with this, it's going to be very tough. So let me go over some frequently asked questions, and then we want to open up and have a little bit of time for questions today too. So some frequently asked questions: should I do this mastery process over the weekend? The answer is that's up to you. I tend to do kind of a brain dump, but not necessarily a detailed plan over the weekend. I like to surrender over the weekend and kind of give my weekend either to myself or to my family, and not necessarily be too obsessed with this. The second is, can I use another type of notebook? The answer, unfortunately, is no, not in the first 30 days, because the size of your notebook, 8.5 by 11 spiral notebook, is really like the perfect size to create a plan for the day. Third thing is, when should I return the emails and calls? I was just coaching someone the other day, and he was saying something interesting. Based on the volume of emails he's getting, he actually blocks out 3 or 4 chunks of time during the day to respond to those emails. I think that's a good idea. So you could literally block out, 15-minute segments 3-4 times a day to address those emails, or certainly make quick return calls. I don't think you necessarily have to do that, because if you don't have as many emails as this individual had, maybe you just address them in the reactive time in between everything else. Can I do the planning the night before? Now, this is where I think some people are a little bit more challenged, that are used to doing their major to-do list the night before. So what I encourage with that cohort is go ahead and do a little brain dump, but do not do your plan the night before. You've got your list of things that you can incorporate in your plan the next day. What if my brain dump doesn't add up to the time allowed? Now, this is a gift. It doesn't happen very often with me, but it does happen sometimes. When I have a window of about 11-hour day, I say, and I come up with 9.5 hours, that's a gift. I always then go deeper and say, what else can I accomplish? Is there someone I can reach out to? Is there someone I can help today? I always try to find other things I can fit in, because what you want is a plan. It's like a hand in glove. Your plan meets the time available. You do not want 11-hour window and a 9-hour plan. Some people think that's good. I would argue that's not accomplishing what you want. Can I make changes throughout the day? The answer is absolutely yes. You can make tweaks and changes, and you will make tweaks and changes. And then what happens if my day crashes and burns? Well, what I usually recommend, if you have, let's say, a son or daughter that's sick at school or something in the morning, and all of a sudden your day is turned upside down, I recommend restarting your day at 12 o'clock. Take care of whatever that emergency is, and then restart and create a day from 12 o'clock to 5 o'clock, or whatever that interval of time is. And again, you just have that happens. For most people, you're going to crash and burn once every week or two, so it's not unusual. This is about getting better. It's not about being perfect. So a few takeaways, and then I'll kind of turn this over to any questions. One is, mastering time is really a choice. The best of the best, the most successful out there, I will say, one of the common denominators and one of the separators is they're very masterful of time. The second thing, takeaway, if you fail to plan, plan to fail. You've heard that. That was a quote from Ben Franklin many, many years ago, and it still holds out to be true. It takes 30 days to form a habit. So if in fact you get frustrated after a week, hang in there for another 3 weeks. I guarantee if you can do this effectively, it's going to give you a gift of time, 30 minutes, an hour a week, an hour a day, that you can then see the dividend of that down the road. Be proactive, not reactive. It's so important in all of this is get your proactive, reactive blend under control. It's very hard. If you don't have that blend under control, no matter what system you're going to use, it won't work. Monitor, monitor, monitor. The numbers don't lie. One of the reasons I gave you this little inventory exercise, inventory of when you should do it, how you should go about doing it, what's your mindset, and also inventory of how you're spending your time presently, is that it really gives you some real hard facts and figures, and those numbers don't lie. And last, which is certainly not maybe a key takeaway, but a lot of people think, success is more of a noun. No, it's a verb. It's the actions that you take. I heard this quote many years ago: intentions without actions equal squat. So I really encourage everybody, to take a leap, kind of helping our sponsor here, take a leap, act on something that's going to help you. And I think if you can get your arms around time and you can be devoting a little bit more time to the right things, I think you're going to see a lot more success. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And I certainly want to thank, Ingage and Leap for bringing this to you. And really, I encourage you to, reach out. If I can be of assistance or help, you can certainly reach me through any of the contact information here, or certainly through Leap. So I want to turn it back to you, Liz, and we'll go from there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. That was excellent information. Bear with me one moment, everybody. Okay. All right, so we're gonna, like Mark mentioned, shift over and do some Q&A. Looks like we've got a few questions rolling in, but I'll give you another moment to submit your questions in the questions box located in your GoToWebinar menu. And while you're doing that, I wanted to tell you a little bit. Hold on one moment. Make sure everybody can see my screen here. There we go. All right, so wanted to tell you about a special offer we have running for the month of March. New customers that sign up for Leap Premium before March 31st will receive their choice of either 1 month of free premium Leap services or up to 3 brand new Apple iPads. So please drop us a note in the chat section if you'd like to get in on this great offer. Okay, all righty. Got some questions. So the first question we have comes from Jody. When will we get to the recorded version to review next week? So we will be sending out the recording from today's webinar first thing tomorrow morning. So you'll be able to reference back to it or pass it along to other colleagues that you think might benefit. Okay. And the next question, this one is for Mark. Do you map out your day by hand, or do you use an app or technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. I actually do it by hand, and I also leverage, technologies in terms of, my Outlook calendar and all that. I look at the technologies as tools, not as a replacement of my planning exercise. So I find, and I keep all of my notes and my conversations all within the notebook. So I always have, an opportunity to go back, to look at the day and certainly to look at those notes. So what you see is what I do. And I spend a little bit more time planning my day probably than what I recommend to students, because, I do think over time you get better and more masterful of it. And I'll probably average about, 45 minutes a day planning the day.
Very cool. All right. Next question. What do you recommend for not morning people? Any tips from Bruce?
Not morning people. Okay, great question. Because, I do find myself obviously being a little bit more of a morning person. So, like I mentioned before, when I ask audiences that question, it's always interesting. It's almost exactly 50-50. So you're certainly not alone, Bruce. So what I would recommend is asking yourself, okay, what are some of the activities that I can do in the morning versus, let's say, later in the day? Now, if some of those activities that, since you're not a morning person, might be more the rote exercises, it might be more administrative things, it might be more, kind of check it off the list, kind of things. And then really heavy up in the mid and latter part of the day, some of the things that require more thought, more planning, more creativity. So I would just shift it and spend more time, later in the day. And if it works better for you, certainly right into the evening with those activities that kind of mirror what your mindset is.
Very cool. Thank you, Mark. All right. Next question we have from also Mark. What if my brain dump keeps growing throughout the day or things keep popping up?
Brain dump. So I do keep kind of a running list of those things. I think this is kind of a discipline thing, but if you have a day timer, and I know that's an old-fashioned thing for many people, a kind of a written calendar, a day timer to keep. I actually put those things that pop up, and they constantly pop up. I'll either list them in my spiral notebook, then move them to whatever day, or I'll put them on whatever day I feel like I can accomplish them. The other thing is, if it's minor amount of stuff, you also can just kind of plug it into that reactive time. As I said before, 120 minutes a day is what I encourage you to have for reactive time. And the best way I think to be able to do that is keep kind of a running list, and then you can kind of plug some of those things in. I'm not a big believer that, in just continuing your day on and on and on. If you've said, everyone here works hard and a long day. And if you've said, okay, my day is going to end at 6 o'clock, end it at 6 o'clock. And I think if you can plug those things in as they pop up earlier, great. If not, they're not part of your plan that day. It's kind of like a client doing an addendum or a change order. You're not necessarily going to do it just because they asked to do it that day. You're going to schedule it, on another day.
Great. Actually, I'd like to share a comment, and then we'll get to another question. Shout out from Jody. She said, we have discussed many of your ideas in the past. This was a very helpful deep dive into your system. I am excited to see a month from now how much better my life is going to be from using your ideas. Thank you, Mark. So,
excellent.
Thank you, Jody. We have a true believer over here. Okay, and
well, Jody, also I'll just mention, if you are that committed, make a note of my email address and telephone number, at least for the next 30 days. I'll kind of be your time management coach. So don't hesitate to reach out to you or others that are on this, and you at least have, access to someone that might be able to help.
Actually, and that ties into the next question. Mark, if you don't mind, I'm going to have you share your screen again. Somebody was asking, what are your other books? Can I see those again? So if you don't mind pulling up, I think you had the slide showing your other, there we go. And then there is Mark's contact information. So perfect. So would you like to talk about these other wonderful works that you have written?
Yeah, so, many years ago, I created actually a fourth book that was a 30-day remodeling business fitness program. And I started to draw the parallels between business health and personal health. And, the reality is that, we all have a pretty good feel for personal health and what it takes to get healthier and more fit and what have you. But when it comes to the business, most people didn't go to remodeling university or do those things. So I wrote a book called How Fit Is Your Business? And How Fit Is Your Business is a fitness checkup of your business. It's kind of like having your cholesterol and blood pressure checked within the business. And then about half of the book is a prescription of how to improve. Then my next book was Fit to Grow. In our business at Case, I developed early on business themes for growth. So this really unpacks these 12 business themes to grow, a healthy and significant business. And then the present book, Control Your Day, or The Art of Time Mastery. I actually changed the title of this book to The Art of Time Mastery because that's really what it was about. So those are the 3 books that are out available, and certainly you can get them through either my friends at Leap or Ingage, or always through like Amazon as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Mark. And yes, I would say art is definitely the correct term. I know in my career, definitely learning different tactics and such, it can be a beast. So that was the last question that we had come in. I will say, if you guys, like Mark mentioned, have any additional questions that you think of afterwards today, please feel free to go ahead and send them to us. Here's our contact information, and we'll, get you in touch with Mark. And if you would like any more information about Leap and Ingage, let us know on the poll that you see on your screen now, and we will get in touch with you right away. As I mentioned earlier, keep an eye out for an email from us tomorrow morning containing today's webinar recording for you to go back and reference as needed or pass along to colleagues. If there are no other questions, I would like to say thank you very, very much, Mark, for a wonderful presentation and for, bringing us some really usable content, to this Tuesday. And we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thank you so much.